Well, hello, Canadian Premier League fans, One Soccer supporters, and footy fans across this great country. Thank you for joining us today. The CPL is back. That's right. The announcement you've been waiting for is here. And what better place to hold an 8-team tournament than in beautiful Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island? The Island Games kicks off August 13th with a rematch between the finalists Forge and Cavalry. You can watch that in every match of this tournament on One Soccer, as well as extensive pre and post match coverage. So make sure you subscribe to One Soccer. So to talk about the Island Games, I'm so excited to be joined by the commissioner of the CPL, David CLANACHAN. Congratulations, Commissioner, on the announcement of the return to play for the CPL.
Well, thanks, Asa, and thanks for all the support. It's been fantastic. It feels like a year that you and I have been talking about doing this.
That's right.
Been that long, truthfully.
Yeah, the day is finally here, and I know a lot of work went into this, a lot of consideration for various cities around Canada. Langford, BC, Moncton, New Brunswick were also considered. So why did the league choose Charlottetown?
Well, at the end of the day, unfortunately, you got to pick one place, right? And so there has to be somebody that actually gets awarded it. It just turned out that it really became about the opportunity, the size of the market, the fact that the health and safety protocols lined up very well. We actually felt it was one of the safest places, not only in Canada, not only in Atlantic Canada, but globally, truthfully. I mean, when you look at the way they've handled it, and we felt that would be very good, not only for our players and our coaches, but also for the citizens of PEI and for all of our league people that might be there, right? The ones that will be there. So it just was the right decision. It's a great place to do it. And Atlantic Canada has been very good to the CPL so far. So we're happy we're there.
Yeah, and we know that the tournament kicks off on August 13th. It'll run through to September. But what can you tell us about the tournament format itself?
Well, I mean, when you look at it, like, this is our season, right? At the end of the day, and so we're looking at this as our season, and the format is actually a first stage, kind of a round robin with all teams playing, and then we come down to a group stage, and the group stage will consist of half the league left at that point in time, which will then enter another round robin situation, and then the top two teams coming out of that round robin will play in a one-game final. There's no need for home and away. Both teams are at home, as far as we're concerned, for that final, and so that'll crown the champion. So that's it seems like it's easy to say, but it's going to happen over a period of time that's closer to 2 months than it is anything else. So we're very pleased and pretty happy, and obviously very stoked to get out there. And I think our supporters, after today's announcement, there's no doubt the supporters and the fans are going to hear. We'll just amp up what we can do, because this was about pushing the boat away from the dock, and that was announcing where we were going to go and how we were going to do it. And now that we've done that, now we can fill in all the details that we've kind of been holding to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know the supporters have said CLANACHAN said this, and he's not told us much since then. Now we can tell everybody, and so I'm pleased about that too.
Yeah, they've been waiting patiently, and it's all being revealed today. And in the league's release, it mentioned that safety of PEI residents, CPL players, coaches, officials, and staff is the single most important issue. So what are the logistics of living in the hub in PEI?
So the key thing for us is we are going into what has already been termed the maritime bubble. And as we arrive, we have to create our own bubble. And so we've got isolation being done by all of our players in their home markets as we speak. And they've been in isolation for a number of days now. When we're testing them, all of our players have tested at this point in time, and all have been negative results. So that's great. We will be further testing before we 2 times before we get onto the planes. And as we get on the planes, which will be chartered planes, and arrive in PEI, we'll then go into a 4-day quarantine, and then being able to play our first game match on the 5th day. So we're creating our own bubble, so that's the key thing. And that means that we're just, it's that insulating factor. And so by doing that, we're able to do it in PEI, obviously. And again, they've been great to work with. Their health officer, the provincial health officer, has been fantastic.
One of the benefits for the Canadian Premier League is that it operates in a country that I'm going to say has handled this pandemic better than most other countries in this continent. Yet other sports leagues in North America have returned and will be returning before the CPL kicks off. Why did the Canadian Premier League wait so much longer to restart?
So I think here's the key thing. One, and I'll keep going back to the health and safety and
Mhm.
what was required. I think the advantage we had, Ace, if I can say this, is that because we hadn't started our season yet, we had the ability. We didn't have to rush back to finish the season, right? We had the
Sure.
ability to kind of take our time at this, be very methodical, and again, I'll thank the supporters and fans for being patient and loyal. Although at times I think I tested them, but the point is they were, and so that we were able to take the appropriate time to do it the right way, which is I think what most Canadians would expect of us, that they would
Mhm.
that the CPL would do it the right way, and I think we've done that.
Oh, it's very encouraging everything that's gone into this. So that's is obviously something we're looking forward to. Just getting soccer going again in this country. Can't wait for that first match in particular. Now there has been a spike in positive cases, COVID-19 cases, in many of those other leagues that have restarted. So what have you learned from those scenarios, and what might the CPL be doing differently?
Well, the key thing is our protocols, right? And so when and the province has helped us quite a bit in PI because of the rules that they have around social distancing, around the numbers and groups, around how you separate teams and players, and just how you're dealing with that. The other thing too is our players are all in Canada, and
Hmm.
so you said it right off the bat here. As a country, we've done a great job of kind of trying to knock this down. We should never take anything for granted. We have to be as vigilant as ever, but we've done a good job. And then we're going to a place where we're not necessarily seeing a lot of cases in that area, so that you're mitigating the risk factor in I think in a very good manner, and
Yeah.
that's the key thing for us.
How important financially is it for the league to have a season this year? And what has been the biggest challenge you faced in coordinating this return to play for the CPL?
Well, to me, it's massive, and I think you called this out in another interview earlier on this year, and that is a league that really we only had our maiden season, so to speak,
Hmm.
last year, a freshman year. We needed a sophomore year. You don't want to go out of the mind's eye of the fans and the supporters. So it's important for us to be there, and certainly that keeps the momentum that we've built last year. I think we're a very
Yeah.
creative, nimble, and flexible league. And so to do that is extremely important for us. We recognize still no fans in the stands and everything else, but people don't forget about you at that point in time. I
Yep.
think the biggest thing that if you want to talk about hurdles, it's this ever-changing world that we've all been living in through this whole COVID-19. It's just, I don't want to spend my whole time talking about it, but it is the overarching thing, and it's the thing that is around us every day now, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, we've all, I think as people in this country, we've adapted very well, and done the right things for the most part. So I think it's been easier that way, but it's still something that when you think about sport, up until this year, we never thought about anything like this ever affecting us, right? So
Yeah.
that's been the single biggest thing.
Yeah, no one's really been prepared for any of this. You mentioned no fans in the stands. So what does the CPA plan to have for fan interaction and engagement?
Well, there's a number of things the team is working on, and I can give you little snippets, but they've planned this announcement cycle that's just going to keep happening. But the key thing for us is to engage fans as much as possible in everything we're doing, whether it be socially, digitally, letting them be part of what's happening. Whether it be everything from man of the match to goal of the match, all of those things, weigh in on it, make sure that they have access to it, through whether it be through the broadcasters who've done a great job with us, but also with One Soccer and Media Pro, all the games will be available to everyone, and that's key.
Yeah.
And lots of material around it. It's not just about games in the matches. It's about players. It's about coaches. It's about everything that goes into this, which I think is truly entertaining when you look at it.
Yeah, can't wait to see it. Thank you, Commissioner, for your time today, and thank you so much for creating this tournament and making sure that it does return to play.
Well, again, thanks, Asa. Thanks for your support. I want to also, I have to shout out to PEI and
Yeah.
Atlantic Canada in general, as well as the city of Charlottetown, but as well as our sponsors and partners, and of course yourselves at One Soccer and Media Pro. But also, I would like to say this: about our players.
Hmm.
I think our players have shown a tremendous level of professionalism through this whole thing. And I owe it to them to be able to say to them, thank you. Thank you for the way you've handled yourselves as young professionals. I don't think you could have done any better. I mean, sure, there's the, every once in a while, there's the social media rascals that like to tease people about what's going on. But that keeps it light, right? And so I think, when you take a look at all of that, after today, things are going to ramp up and they're going to go. So I want to get it out of the way now and thank everybody that I just did now, because I think we're in for a really special treat in the next couple of months.
Love it. Well said, Commissioner. And on behalf of everyone at One Soccer, we thank you for watching, and we will be returning to our studio very soon to give you extensive coverage of the Island games and everything else that's happening in the world of soccer. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It is the place to get your Canadian footy fix. Till then, take care, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, the news we've been waiting for so long has finally arrived. The Commissioner of the Canadian Premier League, joined by Asa Raymond, announcing the Canadian Premier League's return to play the 2020 season. The Island Games is going to take place beginning on August 13th with a juicy matchup to kick it off, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's bring in the boys, Oliver Platt and Kurt Larson, here with me to break it all down. Gentlemen, we finally know the location of this tournament. Ollie, we know that you're going to be going, and you have some breaking news on top of breaking news for us to kick off the show.
Breaking news, I'm COVID-free. Happy to announce I've had the results of my first test back, and they were negative. So far, so good.
Give us the second part of that.
The second part?
Second part of it. Are you 100% in the clear?
Well, it does say that it's not complete proof that you do not have the virus, but there obviously is that little incubation period that has bitten MLS among other leagues. But
it's good enough for me.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling
good enough for me. You're on the charter. You're on.
When's the next swab, Ollie? How long do you have?
I'm not actually sure, but as we'll get into, I think we'll be being tested before and after departure. So more tests to come, and it's not a pleasant experience. I can share that much.
All right, let's get into the details. We don't need to know any more about Ollie's nose for right now. Kurt, the announcement, Charlottetown matches will be played at UPEI, home of the Panthers. That is where they will be building the facility, renovating at least the facility to make sure it's ready to play for the CPL beginning on August 13th. Ultimately, Kurt, what do you think went into the decision to choose Charlottetown? The commissioner talked about it specifically, but maybe where did they take the upper hand versus places like Moncton or Langford?
Yeah, I think there were obviously positives about both coasts and both islands. I think just from a soccer standpoint, just given the facility that's already out in Langford where Pacific FC plays, and then now their gorgeous training center and the amenities, you would have thought that Langford might have been the front runner. And there were times throughout this entire process where basically for 2 months, we were hearing different things that, 1 week it was Langford, another week it was PEI. So even, we were kind of in the dark because I think that's kind of how these negotiations came down to the wire. But I think in the end, PEI, just due to various reasons based on the partnership, whether that be financial and, other opportunities on the island. You also just got to love the novelty of going to PEI. It's not, a professional sports hub. You have the opportunity to go to what's essentially, no offense to UPEI, an open field, and build a complex, build a stadium fit for a made-for-TV event. And then we can't overlook just the safety of the players. It's no secret that PEI has kind of been at the forefront of making sure that COVID-19 has not been on the island. Very few positive cases, and so that run of health, the players will be safe out there. So it's an amazing opportunity, and there's a lot of risk. We got to get it right, but we're going to PEI, and I think it's a great decision.
And the next question, speaking of risk, one of us will be going to Charlottetown, Ollie, and obviously we've all had our eyes very closely on MLS's back and the NWSL, who, aside from a bumpy start for both leagues, seemingly absolutely crushed their bubble and made sure that the player safety was number one. Having said all that, are you satisfied with what you've heard from the Canadian Premier League in terms of its safety protocols? Because as David CLANACHAN mentioned repeatedly, that's foremost in front of mind for all of them right now.
Yeah, it's going to be very thorough, I think. As I've said, I'm in a period of quarantine. I've had my first test. There's going to be more tests. There's going to be things on the ground to make sure that everyone's safe and kind of separated as much as possible as well, team to team. So I think one of the benefits of having this little bit of a longer wait with the CPL is we've been able to watch what has and hasn't worked elsewhere. And I know Canada's not the USA, and we've got the situation with COVID a lot more under control here. But what we have learned from the USA is that even with those higher case levels down south, the bubbles have worked. They have held up. Aside from the issues MLS had with teams bringing them in from their own markets, the bubble itself has held up really well, and obviously the NWSL did a great job as well. You contrast that with Major League Baseball, and they're trying to go city to city, and it's a lot more difficult, right? So again, I don't think these two countries are completely comparable, but I certainly think it would have been riskier to play in home markets and more challenging in a number of ways when you look at the travel and things like that. The bubble format, it's tried and tested. We can learn from others, and I think it's going to be good to go and deliver a good season for us.
Yeah, and I think part of the delay in making this announcement, and we've seen fans be upset at the lack of information coming out, and I think there's something to say for that. I think the league probably could have been a little bit more transparent with the process, but you have to understand that they're also going back and forth with chief medical officers of health, to the point where we're talking about how many people can be in certain areas of the stadium and negotiating what's safe, what's not, what does the province want, what's the max number of people that can be within the vicinity of the actual playing surface. So a lot has gone into it, and that's part of the reason why it's taken so long to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Ollie, just back to bubble life specifically. Obviously, you mentioned the sort of the overall positive feeling about the safety protocols being in place, but is there any trepidation? Is there anything about the bubble that you're not looking forward to, other than the fact that it is a bubble and you're going to be there from early August until pretty much the end of September?
I don't think so. Like, to be honest, life has been a little weird at home in the past few months for all of us. So I'm going from kind of maybe a slightly less restricted bubble to another. But I can't say I have any trepidation. Should I have any trepidation, Kurt?
Well, I asked that question to a number of players from different teams yesterday when news started to trickle out, and all of a sudden, all the teams and all the players started to know. And I was a bit surprised that each one of the players, I talked to 3 different players, they basically said, we just want to play, and with complete disregard. Now then, they said that they're going to be spending a lot of time on PlayStation. They said they're going to be, we'll see what it's like 2 or 3 weeks in, when you're kind of confined to the hotel and maybe one other area of the downtown of Charlottetown. But it was a stark difference to maybe what we saw from some Major League Soccer players early on, where they were complaining about maybe some of the food they were receiving, and we all saw that viral image. I don't get that from CPL players, and that was encouraging because these guys want to play. I had one player tell me that I'm in my prime right now. I cannot afford to not do anything this year for my career, for the sake of my career. He said he doesn't care about being in a hotel room. He doesn't care about being locked away. He said he has to get on the field because, it's his livelihood at this point.
Yeah, that's one of the crucial things I think about just having a season beyond the health of the league itself, is that you have a lot of players in their early 20s who, are trying to use this league as a platform, right? To go on maybe to other leagues and really have a career and, be in national team contention. And a footballer's career is short, to lose an entire year is significant. And that, I think would have been a really difficult thing to happen to all the young players in this league.
Yeah, and in speaking to a couple players out west yesterday who have young families, I think that's obviously one of the main factors for, if there is any trepidation, it's just the extended period away from being with their children and their partners. And Kurt, is that one of the reasons why you decided not to go to the bubbles, because you were going to be there for so long?
When I heard this competition was going to be taking place on one of the coasts, I started looking up fishing charter boats. I started looking up, opportunities to cycle around the coastlines, and all of a sudden, this bubble situation comes up. So I said, let's send Oliver Platt instead. And I don't know. I've covered these tournaments before, man. I've been to 2 World Cups. It's not easy to be away for that long. I got a new baby. Oliver, you don't mind taking the hit? Come on.
No, well, actually, one thing I'm not particularly looking forward to, since you asked beforehand, Adam, is the privilege of being the middleman between Kurt and CPL coaches after he said something on air that they don't like. So that'll be one thing I have some trepidation about.
All kidding aside, yeah, this is not like a World Cup or a Euro, but being completely immersed in the game, in the sport, watching that many games in person, it's actually going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be an interesting experience. There's going to be tough times, but just think of the opportunity to be immersed with all these players, these coaches, have late night chats at the hotel, just kind of learn about their philosophies, and then just be close to the game, so close to the game. You're never going to experience this again, so it's a great opportunity for you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for sure. And, we obviously, one of the challenges for us is that we have teams, we're based in Toronto, and we have teams all around the country, and we don't get them in one place like this. So hopefully it's a great opportunity for us to have more access than ever and take fans, kind of behind the scenes of their teams more than ever.
Soccer every day for 2 months after MLS and after NWSL. We're just continuing that momentum. So I think there's a lot more positives than the very few potential negatives. Okay, Kurt, obviously, as we mentioned, this has been something that's a long time coming, and some fans have been critical just because they're desperate for news. And you can understand the fans' perspective. They want to know what's going on with their clubs, especially got a feel for Atletico Ottawa, their first season, and there's this delay, but finally they can be relieved to know that they're going to meet their team, but they're not going to meet their team in the opening match, because the opening match is a rematch of the 2019 CPL finals, Cavalry and Forge. Are you stoked, Kurt, to see your Cavs get a shot at redemption against Cavs match of the tournament?
My Cavs. There's allegations that I've been turning on my Cavs this off season. So we'll see what happens throughout this tournament. I like to pick a winner. I'm not sure if they're the front runner anymore. I think you had to go with the juiciest matchups through the first 2 weeks of the season, just for entertainment value. And it goes beyond just me wanting to see Bobby Smirniotis face off with Tommy Wilden Jr. again. You remember that little thing at the end of last season at the finals press conference when I think Tommy said that Forge were the Cup champions, but Calvary were the real league champions. Do you remember that? Am I misquoting him?
Yeah. No. Well, I remember there was some dispute about what was kind of the more impressive achievement, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll save that for the broadcast. But so I think you had to go with that matchup, but I think you got to go with all of the sexy matchups through the first few weeks, because if the format is one which every team is going to be playing each other in a kind of regular season, I would hate for things to come down to the final few weeks or final few games of that regular season, and for those games not to mean anything for the playoffs, right? So you wouldn't want Forge and Calvary to play on the final day of the regular season if both those teams are already locked into whatever the playoffs are. So you got to get the big games out of the way first, so that those teams have something to compete for.
I think as well, what you'd hope is that a lot more people than usual are going to be watching that first match, right? And potentially giving this league and a tournament a chance. And you want to give them something that they, makes them want to come back and watch the next game. And I thought with MLS, I've enjoyed that tournament, but I thought the first game, okay, it was a rivalry between Orlando and Inter Miami, but they'd never played each other before. So the rivalry isn't established. And, Inter Miami as an expansion team aren't very good. And I thought that was just a bit of a disappointing game to start the tournament. So Forge and Cavalry, you can't go wrong. Something always happens when these two teams meet.
Hoping too that Bobby Smirniotis keeps that beard for the tournament, because that thing is a work of art. Let's talk about the format now, and we'll get your thoughts, Ollie and Kurt, on your overall sort of expectations for what's going to play out and whether we think it's a good thing or a bad thing. But just to reiterate, it's a first stage, a group stage, and then the championship final for the North Star Shield. So 28 matches in the first stage. My math isn't amazing, but to me that says every team plays every team once in that initial round robin. Top 4 teams from that move on to another round robin. So those teams will play each other once again. From that, the top 2 teams will go on to meet in a single match final. The commissioner is saying that because there's no home field advantage, there's no need to make a 2-legged tie for the championship. Ollie, you'll be there. You'll be covering it. We've been anticipating this for a while. Do you think they got this format right?
Yeah, I like it. I love a one-legged final. I've said that even, in a normal year, I would love to see a one-legged final, a Grey Cup type event for this league. I think that can do big things. And I like the fact that, one of the pros, I guess, of having a shortened season is that I think basically every game is going to matter. You may get a dead rubber at the end of the first stage where 2 teams that are out of it meet each other. There may be the odd game like that, but compared to a normal season where you maybe have some games in the summer and at the end of the year where teams don't really have anything to play for, I think every team for a long time is going to have something to play for here, with the 4 teams going through to the next stage. So it's going to be a bit more like the NFL in that way, I think, where every game is going to really be meaningful. And hopefully that creates a lot of excitement. I don't think there's going to be much margin for error here.
Kurt, pros and cons of this tournament? Format, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the format. I think maybe the one adjustment I might have made would have been maybe to have 6 teams make a playoff, top 2 get a bye to the semifinal. Have kind of a play-in round, if you will, because I think you could run into issues, if you have that round robin group of 4, and if it's even possible, kind of the final game of that round robin also features the same 2 teams that are going to play in the final. Could be a little bit strange, kind of like we saw towards the end of the 2019 CPL season, where Forge and Calvary were basically playing games against each other for nothing. But for fans, it's going to be awesome. I mean, what are we talking about? 4 or 5, maybe even 6 match nights a week. So similar to MLS, you're going to have Canadian soccer on your TV more than ever.
And Kurt, right back to just to carry over what Ali mentioned in the previous point about MLS is back in, sort of what we learned in terms of scheduling, just overall performance. But what do you think the CPL was watching specifically, health protocols aside, from that tournament that they might have included in the island games?
Well, I think from a broadcast standpoint, you're always curious to see how fans are going to react to how this looks on TV. And kind of an interesting sticking point with ESPN and Fox Sports down in the US was, I believe ESPN went without fan noise in the venue.
Correct.
And I believe Fox Sports decided to pipe in fan noise. Now, it's not a big difference for me, but I think at the end of the day, I preferred no fan noise, so you could hear the players, you could hear the communication on the pitch, you can hear the coaches yell. Shout out to Armin Badakian, our technical producer, who I believe for an entire half recorded everything that Greg Vanney said and had a viral tweet. That was aired on Fox Sports as well. So you're learning things about that. Just the look. Do you want to have some kind of virtual situation where you put fake fans in stands around the stadium? So the CPL and Media Pro are taking all that into consideration. And trying to build on what MLS has done right, and look at excluding the things that maybe they haven't done right.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how the teams kind of learn from MLS as well in terms of their approach. We know that fitness is going to be massive, and pre-seasons have been not what they usually are, so that's going to be an interesting aspect of it. Depth is probably going to be more significant than usual. I think we've seen in MLS that teams haven't been as clinical as they normally are. We saw Columbus go out last night. I thought they were the best team in the tournament probably, but they just didn't take their chances, and they're out of the tournament. So I think it's a slightly different game, not just in MLS, but across the world right now, because of the effects of this pandemic and the different season structures that teams have come back to. So I'm interested to see which coaches have really been paying attention and learning from that, and how the teams learn from what we've seen so far in other leagues as well.
Isn't a lot of this about motivating your players? I mean, isn't that, what did we see with Toronto FC, when they crashed out of MLS's back? I mean, Oliver, I think we'd agree that Toronto FC is for sure one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, if not the best team when they're firing on all cylinders. They looked absolutely terrible in that loss to New York City FC. And so isn't part of this about who wants to be there more, the motivation and who can get, their players all kind of on the same page and competing?
Yeah, for sure. But I think the two go hand in hand and kind of feed into each other, right? Like if you're fit and you feel good and you're ready to go, then you feel more motivated naturally, I think, and you feel like you have a better opportunity at the tournament. So I think it's all in preparation, really. I don't think any team will be coming to this tournament and thinking, we don't really care, because this is the season. This isn't just kind of an interlude in the middle of the season, as it is in MLS. So for me, it's going to be about preparation and how organized these teams are, and that will lead to belief and motivation in itself.
Okay, guys, considering the tournament format, we know it well by now. We'll be reading these press releases and listening to the interview with the commissioner. We know the format well. Who do you think this benefits best, Kurt? Do we want to go with Valor FC? Do we think they're the big underdogs? Because we've taken some criticism in the past for not having them on these hangouts. I mean, that's a longer conversation, but we'll start with them. Do we think that they could be tournament favorites here?
Valor
FC.
I would pick them as my tournament favorite, Adam Jenkins. A lot of new players in, new faces at the back, which they had to do. You just can't, right? It's not even comparable to what York 9 has done this offseason and Forge largely, retaining their squad. So for going team by team, Valor would not be at the top of my list of favorites right now.
They're not favorites, but what I will say is that if you have 4 teams that are able to go through to that second round, and then you only have one game against each other team in the second round, it does open up the possibility of kind of a bit of a Cinderella story more than the normal season would, right? So I think teams like Valor, who I would have lower down the power rankings right now, and they've had to go through basically a rebuild of their entire squad, it gives them a bit more hope, I think, than they would normally have. And so that should be a good thing, right? I think for teams like that have gone through a lot of off-season change, and they're not the only ones.
Okay, let's go around the league quickly, and I do mean quickly. Quick thoughts from each of you on all 8 teams. We will start out west with Pacific. What do we think? What are we going to be watching for? Just, it doesn't have to be a prediction, doesn't have to be a big storyline. Just one thought from each of you, and we'll start with Pacific. Ollie, you're up first.
Pacific, I would say, what's their depth like? I think the starting 11 looks good. That team could potentially compete with any other team in the league on paper. Not sure that they have the depth of other teams, and it's going to be interesting to see if, how far their best players can carry them, and whether that maybe slight lack of depth compared to others is costly or not.
Not sure what their preparation has been. I know I think a few more teams had moved into the final stage of training, full 11-a-side training, and maybe Pacific were lagging behind in that respect. So I'm not sure what their preparation has been. Some great offseason additions, but right now I'd probably put them in my top 4.
Kurt, Cavalry, one thought.
Missing players, missing a lot of key players. I'm worried for Cavalry.
Yeah, namely who plays left wing. If Luca and Escalante aren't there, it could mean you have to move Jordan Brown or Sergio Camargo out of position. And I think more generally in the attack, the question is who's going to score for them. Is Cordova going to be the guy? Is Brown going to improve on last season? Obviously,
has the offseason gone to plan? Has the offseason gone to plan?
That's the question, right? I think they'll be good. I think they'll get in the top 4, but are they quite as good as they were last season? That's up for debate.
Bounce back season for the Eddies. What do we think, Ollie?
Could be a bit of a dark horse. I really do think this is a good 11 on paper. I would ask the same question I did about Pacific. If they lose a couple of key guys, what's the answer going to be? Particularly, I think they're going to need the best out of Hansen Barkai and Kevin Alleman, because if those two aren't there, you get back to where you were last season with that kind of lack of creativity and attacking quality.
I would say reinforced to a certain extent. I think Duran Lee was a good pickup, and everybody in Edmonton thinks that Easton Ungaro is going to be able to prove me wrong and back up his 2019 season with another good performance at on Prince Edward Island.
And Kurt, one thought on Valor.
So we're coming back to Valor now, and I didn't see Valor in our rundown originally. So were you just trying to get me to pick on Valor earlier?
I wasn't trying to get you to pick on Valor. No, I was giving you the opportunity just to sing their praises if you wanted to.
Well, they already won't talk to me out there. They won't return my calls, but I have nothing against them. It's just a team with a lot of, they didn't perform well in 2019, made a lot of changes. You got to prove me wrong. Go and compete. But I think they should be better than they were last year. I mean, Skylar Thomas and Jordan Morel were a big issue for them last season. They've made changes. They brought in a new goalkeeper on loan from Montreal Impact and James Pantemis. So I think they're going to concede less, and that'll give them at least a better chance than in 2019.
Ollie, I want your thought, but I also want to ask you too, are they in a better position than anyone in a sense because of the season they had last year? And outside of Winnipeg, a lot of the conversation about contenders and favorites hasn't been on Valor?
I don't know if I'd say they're in a better position, because I just think they had so much to do in terms of overhauling their roster, and they maybe did it a little behind everyone else because they weren't sure if they were going to be able to keep, guys like Bustos and Petrasso. So I agree with Kurt. They are better. I just think maybe other teams have kind of outpaced them in that regard, that have rebuilt as well. And I think maybe it was more of a 1-year job for Valor in terms of rebuilding the squad into a real contender. So they wouldn't be in my top 4 right now, but I think it'll be close up there, and they have the opportunity in this format to prove some people wrong.
Now that you've entertained me, did you have Did you have your own thought you wanted to get in here before I moved on?
No, I basically crowbarred it in anyway. Don't worry.
A pro's pro, Oliver Platt. Okay, York 9. Ollie, first word to you. Could be one of the favorites this season.
Yeah, look, they look really strong on paper. The starting 11 looks really good. The depth is there. They're excited about their young guys. They think they're ready to contribute, and if they are, then that could give them a lot of depth. For me, it's just about how good are the international players? Are they as good as advertised? We haven't seen a lot of them, so we don't know. And can the new pieces kind of gel together quickly enough to hit the ground running at this tournament?
Yes, Ollie hit it. The depth, I think, at York 9 rivals what Calvary had last year. Maybe even better than what Calvary had last year on its bench. The question for York 9, and this is coming straight from their front office, is they've added so many good pieces, but can it all come together on the pitch? Yeah. At times, is Jimmy Brennan willing to sacrifice playing the way he wants to play to be pragmatic and get results? There's a little bit of concern that a team that probably would have competed for a championship over an entire season, can they compete in an abridged season and still play the way they want to play?
All right, Kurt, back to you and the champs.
I talked to a rival CPL coach recently about Forge FC. Forge FC came up, and despite losing Tristan Borges, he actually thinks Forge will be better in 2020 because the player they've brought in, how do you say his last, Sabak? This coach says that he is better than Tristan Borges.
Terrifying
thought. Bold claim. Yeah, they're my favorites. For me, the best backline in the league. I know Kurt disagrees on that, but with Maxime Tissot in there, I think it's an incredibly strong group. The midfield is very good as well. I think we will see them maybe add one or two more attacking pieces potentially before the start of the season, and they could use that. But they, to me, just the combination of quality but also continuity from last year makes them the favorite for me.
I think you also just Bobby Smirniotis, he's just a no nonsense kind of guy. Like he is not going to let that team sleep on any games. He's not going to let that club not be prepared. They'll be ready for every game, and I think that's the scariest thing, is that they have arguably the best roster and they have arguably the best coach in the league.
Now the team we know the least about, the new guys, Atletico Ottawa. Maybe that's to their advantage in a tournament and a season. Excuse me, I got to stop saying tournament. A season that's only 2 months long. Ollie, what do we think about Atletico Ottawa?
Well, yeah, that is a good point. Like, no one's going to have seen them before, and so you can't scout them, right? I'll be honest. I think this is going to be an introductory year for them, where they put some pieces together, and they're probably more relevant in a competitive sense next year. But you never know. If they start well, if they get some points in the first couple of games and build up some confidence, maybe they can go on a little run. It's going to be a very short format. It is going to be open to a team putting together a 2 or 3 game winning streak and all of a sudden looking like they could make the top 4. So you never know. But for me, they look a little bit off the pace of some of the other teams at this moment.
Sorry, our boss is calling me. Ottawa for me. I mean, if they can get a win at this tournament, one win, if they can pick up 3 points in one of those games, then I think that's going to be a win for them. So that's where I'm at with them.
I think they're looking for a little more than just one win, but to each their own. Okay, last but certainly not least, Halifax. And Kurt, if you don't have to take a phone call, then what are your thoughts on the Wanderers?
Intriguing. Added a lot of pieces that are obvious upgrades over what they had last year. Oliver Platt broke news a week ago about Alex Marshall landing in Halifax and being under the quarantine period, so he'll be involved. And he could be the best player in the league. So I think they're in the top 4 with a shout at making some noise in the tournament. So it should be an intriguing. One of the more intriguing follows at the league is how Halifax will turn things around. Yeah.
Biggest wild card at the tournament, or the season tournament, whatever we're calling it for me. When I've asked a few people at Halifax, who's impressed them of the newcomers, every single person has said Yoel Morelli. They seem really excited about this guy. Marshall is highly rated as well. Midfield should be way better than it was last year. It's just going to be about, again, I'm sounding like I'm repeating myself, but can a group that has undergone a lot of change kind of gel together quickly enough to really be a force this season?
Next question I'm asking only because I know Kurt is such a big fan of the name MLS is back, but it's the Island Games. Some might say it sounds a little bit like the Highland Games. I was personally hoping for Confederation Cup once we found out they were going to Charlottetown, but I digress. It is the Island Games. What do we think of the name? Did they nail it? A+, B+? What are we going to give them, Kurt?
We'll give them a, I don't know. I don't like playing teacher. I'm going to get a call from somebody over the league office.
I'm just trying to get you.
I wanted Soccer Island. I thought Soccer Island was good. That's what I wanted. I wanted Soccer Island. So it's fine. Does anybody really care about the name? Come on, guys. Let's just watch the games, right?
I like Island Games, and you could reuse this. You know, you could do Island Games 2024 on Vancouver Islands. You could do Island Games in Jamaica for anyone. It's versatile, right? This could become a regular thing for the CPL in the long run.
How about Island Games on Victoria Island? And that's a social media shout out for our friends at Pacific FC. Okay, finally, Kurt, that's a lot about the league. Let's get a little bit of information to the fans about our coverage. Touched on it quickly throughout the show, but final points. What can fans expect from Media Pro Canada and One Soccer as we bring them every single match of this tournament?
I think what you can expect is just the best coverage of this domestic league, and that's going to include some revamped pregame and postgame shows, some new elements in the studio, a new look in the studio, and I'm pretty sure quite a few new faces to bring into the soccer conversation, because I think it's been dominated for a long time by just a few people, and we're trying to bring in more voices to the sport on television. So it's going to look very, very different from CPL broadcasts in 2019. So we're looking forward to it, and we're in the studio tomorrow to prepare.
That mean no more Zoom shows?
There'll probably be a few more Zoom shows. I think we're gonna keep this as an element of what we're doing moving forward. This has been great. It's easy.
It's very easy. It's very flexible. And hey,
I say it's easy. I say it's easy. All I do is
the show somehow.
Yeah, I say it's easy, but all I do is pour a cup of coffee and log on. So
and put minimal hair product in. Is that
yeah.
right?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, guys. Thanks for being here with me today to break down the announcement from Commissioner David CLANACHAN on the return of the Canadian Premier League, the Island Games coming to One Soccer very soon. So you know what that means. Subscribe to our One Soccer channel, both at onesoccer.ca. That's where all the matches are going to be, and the One Soccer YouTube channel for all of the bonus and extended coverage and content that you could desire. Like the video if you liked it. Share it with a friend. CPL is coming back very soon, everyone, and we are certainly excited. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.